Hari Om, dear friends. Welcome to the channel once again. This is the second part of the story, the conclusion of The Black Aeroplane by Frederick Forsyth. In the previous part already, I had discussed about how this gentleman was flying his Dakota aeroplane and he was crossing Paris, and suddenly he got trapped in the black globe of clouds. And as it is, you saw that this gentleman, the protagonist of the story, the narrator of the story, was very desperate to meet his family. He wanted to be present at the time of breakfast and enjoy breakfast with his family. But unfortunately, as I told you, life is very unpredictable. We keep on planning a lot of things, but then life has its own plans. He was flying the Dakota and the fuel was less. It was too low in his aeroplane. In his plane, the fuel was too low and he could not have traveled back to Paris again. But you also saw that communicating with the Paris control room was also very difficult. But again, something mysterious happened. And that is what the author has brought into the focus of the readers, that life is unpredictable and miracles do happen. When miracles happen, you cannot associate logic with miracles. All of a sudden, when this gentleman was trapped in the black globe of clouds, this globe of black clouds, and it was thundering, it was a tumultuous weather in the sky, suddenly he found a black aeroplane that came to his rescue. He could see the pilot and the pilot guided him. He gesticulated him, signaled him to follow, and the narrator followed. So we are going to continue with the next half of the story. I hope there has not been any problem in understanding the story so far. Well, I'll just start from the previous line. He turned his aeroplane slowly to the north in front of my Dakota, and so it would be easier for me to follow him. I was very happy to go behind the strange aeroplane like an obedient child. The narrator was not at all aware of anything around him except that one savior who, like a good Samaritan, appeared to save him, rather rescue him from that kind of a situation. He had no other option but to follow the black aeroplane. So the narrator could not understand as to from where did the black aeroplane come from. But again, I told you, at times life gives us no choices. Life gives us no choices, and even here the narrator did not have any choice but to follow the black aeroplane. After half an hour, the strange black aeroplane was still there in front of me in the clouds. So for half an hour, even after half an hour, the strange black aeroplane was in front of the narrator. Now there was only enough fuel in the old Dakota last tank to fly for 5 or 10 minutes more. I was starting to feel frightened again. Hopefulness, hopelessness, again hopefulness, and hopelessness again. He was hopeful that he would be able to reach his family. He would be able to sit with them and enjoy breakfast in the morning. Next morning, definitely. But at this point of time, when he suddenly saw the thick black clouds, he was hopeless. There was no fuel in the tank. And then when the aeroplane comes to save him, when the aeroplane comes to rescue him, he was hopeful again. And now again, he feels hopeless. So I must tell you that life does not maintain any consistency. Life is always, the graph of life is always up, down, up, down, up, down. It's like that. And you need to understand that nothing is pre-planned. When I say this, I mean nothing goes as we plan all the time. So at this point of time also, he was feeling helpless, he was feeling hopeless, and he was feeling frightened. Because if the fuel exhausted, then there was no other option but death. Or probably a huge accident that might take place, causing him to lose his life. I was starting to feel frightened again, but then he started to go down and I followed through the storm. I had told you there was storm at sky. We had already learnt it. It was completely black. It was a stormy weather, which is very, very, very risky for planes to fly. But even then, there was that black aeroplane which had come to the rescue of the narrator. Suddenly I came out of the clouds. I had told you, my dear friends, life is unpredictable. And this story, somewhere, this has the hint of mystery. This has the hint of mystery where he does not know, like the narrator does not know how things happened. But it happened. He could not practically associate any logic to whatever was happening to him. Suddenly I came out of the clouds and saw two long straight lines of lights in front of me. So that's the aerodrome. That's the runway, basically. It was a runway, an airport. I was safe. And that is the irony of life. When you plan something, it does not happen. And what you do not plan happens. Miracles do happen if you have faith in destiny, if you have faith in God, if you have faith in yourself. It is completely, it was completely out of mind, out of the narrator's mind to save himself like that, to rescue like that. But that happened. All of a sudden, a black aeroplane comes in from nowhere and calls him to follow, signals him to follow, flies through the cloud, and again helps this narrator to rescue. Until now, the narrator who was thinking that he would be dead, till now, when the narrator was thinking that probably the fuel would be exhausted, suddenly found the airport. So the lesson again that Frederick Forsyth tries to give to the readers probably is about the unpredictability of life again, and a kind of miracle that might happen in anybody's life, and definitely that happens in the life of the narrator also. So I landed, but I skipped a line. When he saw the airport, I turned to look for my friend, the black aeroplane. But the sky was empty. And that is when the pilot of this aeroplane, the narrator, the protagonist, had several questions lurking in his mind, lingering in his mind. From where might have the aeroplane come? Who might have driven the aeroplane? It was not known. But yes, it could have been some divine power, some mysterious, miraculous presence, some form of divinity, providence that helped this man escape from such a horrendous situation. So the black aeroplane was gone. The black aeroplane could not be seen anywhere. I landed and was not sorry to walk away from the old Dakota near the control tower. So obviously this man had questions going on in his mind. He had some questions which he wanted to answer. I mean, which he sought answers for. So he went to the control tower. I went and asked a woman in the control center where I was and who the other pilot was. I wanted to say thank you. So out of gratitude, out of humanity, it was his duty to thank that person who saved his life literally and rescued him, helped him rescue from such such an adverse situation. She looked at me very strangely, and this is where the story takes a turn, making the story an open-ended story. Now, an open-ended story definitely, as I had told you in the previous lecture, an open-ended story definitely is a story which leaves you with many questions in mind, or probably many solutions in mind to the questions that come in your mind. A lot of possibilities, a lot of probabilities that the readers are left with is an open-ended plot. The writer does not provide any answer to the questions whatsoever. He leaves the answers to be found out by the readers on the power of the annotation of the text. So she turned at the pilot, the narrator, and she looked at the pilot in a very strange manner, and she said, she laughed, "Another aeroplane up there in the storm. No other aeroplanes were flying tonight." Logic. And that is where logic comes. See, a control room definitely knows anything that's flying above or anywhere which is caught in the radar. But then this lady said a no. So that no gives rise to a lot of questions in the mind of the readers. And she said very clearly there was no other aeroplane flying up in the sky. And yours was the only one I could see on the radar. So only that aeroplane which the narrator was flying could be caught by the radar. And could be caught on the radar rather. So who helped me to arrive there safely without a compass or a radio? If you remember, the compass was not functioning and the radio also malfunctioned. So who could have helped? And without any more fuel in my tanks. So even, there was a paucity of fuel in the tank. There was a shortage of fuel in the tanks. Who was the pilot on the strange black aeroplane flying in the storm without lights? So with this, the story comes to an end, leaving the narrator and the readers both befuddled in a very bizarre situation, in a very puzzled situation. All the readers are very puzzled. Imagine, if you allow logic, if you logically annotate the situation, an aeroplane flying in the sky at such a great height with no compass, no radio, and more importantly, another aeroplane comes to rescue this aeroplane, which does not even have lights. Don't you think it's very miraculous? What could it have been? That is what makes the story an open-ended plot or an open-ended story. Definitely, it was something that could only be felt and not seen. And in our lives, we definitely come across such situations or we experience such things in our lives rather, where we do not have any answer to any question, such as these. It might have been a divine intervention, who knows? It might have been a providential intervention, who knows? But the best part is that the life of this narrator gets saved ultimately. Now, although we come to the end of the story here, you must be thinking about a couple of things. Who could have been the pilot of that aeroplane which came to rescue the narrator? And that is probably what the writer wants us to do, is to think. And that is the reason why the writer does not give an answer to the question here as to who could the person be or who could the pilot be. Therefore, the story, The Black Aeroplane, comes to an end with a lot of possibilities, with a lot of probabilities that the readers are free to analyze and annotate. So with that, I hope you understood the story. It's a story that is full of mystery, suspense, and miracle. It is a story with probably a divine intervention, with probably a providential sign or providential possibility. Who knows? But at the end of the thing, what we decipher is a couple of things. Number one, when we are away from our own people, from our own loved ones, it is then when we realize the importance of a family. This is what we saw in the story. Secondly, when we are in trouble, when we are in such obnoxious situations, is then when we understand the importance of life. And that is, I believe, some of the greatest morals that the writer wanted to offer to the readers. And definitely, there is always a positive force. There is always a positive power that runs the world and that is there to cater to any need of human beings. And that's God. That is God. And that is the power of providence, which actually pulls us through every adverse, obnoxious situation that we encounter. So with that, I hope you understood the explanation. You understood the story very well. I pray for each one of you. I pray for your safety, and I also wish the same for all your family members out there. With that, have a safe and hygienic life. Lead it properly. In times of COVID-19, please stay at home, stay safe. Hari Om.